What's going on, gardeners? It's Sunday, July 24th, and it is a hot one here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Today's video is going to be all about composting kitchen scraps and exactly how beneficial it is to our gardens and our soil. And we are going to do that by actively burying these scraps, and we are going to monitor how much soil biology they bring in. After you watch this video, you will never throw out your kitchen scraps ever again.
If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
If you've been following my garden channel for a while, you know that I have run many experiments about composting kitchen scraps in my garden over the years. I've done things like bury my kitchen scraps in a trench in my garden and then come back 90 days later to see what happened to those kitchen scraps. I've tried spreading those kitchen scraps all over the tops of my garden beds and then burying them under compost and mulch and a tarp to see what happens 60 days later. And what I found in all of those examples is that the native soil microbiology, the bacteria, the fungi, the worms, and other creepy crawlies had come in that time frame and consumed almost all of those kitchen scraps, if not all of those kitchen scraps, and did a great job at composting and breaking them down. But one of the things that I didn't do was catch them in the act. And in order to do that, I have these tree pots that I have left over from fruit trees that I purchased, and I drilled with a hole saw some holes in the bottom. And I'm going to take these and I'm going to fill them up with kitchen scraps and then sink them into my garden like a sunken container, and I'm going to check on them midway through the composting process and then lift them out to see exactly what kind of soil life we are attracting into our garden and just how much soil life burying kitchen scraps can bring in. And the reason why there are two containers is because we're going to run two separate experiments. In this container, I have all kinds of kitchen scraps. I have cut ends of things like celery and zucchini and basil leaves and banana peels and eggshells, sprinkled in with a little bit of coffee grounds. All kinds of good stuff are in this one. Then over here, I just have coffee grounds, plain old coffee grounds that I use for making cold brew iced coffee. So we're going to run these side by side and we're going to figure out which one brings in more soil life. Is it all the kitchen scraps with the organic matter in there, or can coffee grounds on their own also bring in a lot of worms and other creepy crawlies, because we constantly hear from gardeners how great coffee grounds are for your soil. So let's put this all to the test. And this raised bed garden right here is going to be our test bed. Now this is a bed that I have resting, I have it mulched, I have a tarp placed on top of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig holes in our garden, one here and one here, and we're going to halfway sink those containers into the ground, and then we're going to bury our kitchen scraps in there in each container with a blend of the native soil that I'm pulling out of this bed, which is predominantly locally made turkey compost, but has been sitting in this bed for several years now. Okay, now both equally sized containers have been buried to roughly the same depth. And I also backfilled my garden soil around the edges, and I lightly tamped down and compacted everything. So these containers are seated in very well. Now we are going to partially fill them with a little bit of the native garden soil. And remember, we have holes pre-drilled in the bottoms of these containers, so that's where we want our worms and other animals that live in our garden soil to come in. And I think it's going to be important to mix in some of the native garden soil, because we kind of want to, we need to incorporate some of that soil because the worms may need some kind of moisture substrate since their bodies are so prone to drying out. So we're going to then dump half our coffee grounds in here. We're going to dump half our kitchen scraps in here. And then we're going to put in a little bit more of the soil in each. Then we're going to do the other half of the coffee grounds. We want to mix everything in as evenly and homogeneously as possible. Top it with more of the garden soil. And then we're just going to kind of mix. And last but not least, we're going to pull all of our old mulch around. And it's going to be pretty important that we keep this area hydrated, because again, we want to bring in the worms and the other bugs that live in the soil, and they need a moist environment to thrive. If you've ever seen earthworms dried out and dead on a sidewalk, that's because they accidentally surfaced in a bad location and they couldn't get back underground, so they wind up drying out very quickly. So we really need to provide an environment here that our worms will actually want to come to. And to fully encourage the worms to come, we want to try and wet this down a little bit, not too much. This is just rainwater right out of my water barrels from a thunderstorm we had yesterday. So we want to try and keep that soil evenly moist, but not wet. I'm also going to lightly moisten the surrounding area because we just disturbed all of that soil, and I want to make sure that any poor animals that I disturbed, I can get them back into a moist environment. So you see, because this is mostly compost and kitchen scraps, it's all draining very, very quickly. So what we need to do is we need to cover this, because we can't let this medium dry out, because then the earthworms and other creepy crawlies won't come. So I'm going to place a board over these containers, and then I'm going to kind of prop this up sort of like a tent, because I want to be able to let fresh air in, but I also want to be able to preserve the moisture, and I don't want the sun to really beat up on those containers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check back periodically until I start seeing some decomposition. Now, I don't know how long that'll take. That could take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe longer. I'm not really sure what to expect, but I will peer in here periodically. I will look for changes in the quality of the kitchen scraps, and then if I see that decomposition has become significant, but there are still quite a few kitchen scraps left over, I'm going to pull these out, and then we will go through our soil and we will find out exactly what kind of wildlife we brought in by using this method. It's Saturday, August 13th, and I think it's finally time that we check on our little composting experiment right here. Now, it is 7:32 p.m., and I specifically waited until the evening because I want to try and catch nocturnal creatures like earthworms at work. So if I did this in the middle of the day, the earthworms may not be very active. However, I also needed to make sure that there was still enough daylight to actually catch this on camera. So let's uncover this and see if we see any kind of soil life at work. And I kind of forget what these look like initially, but I'm guessing there probably is quite a bit of decomposition in here. There's probably not nearly as many visible kitchen scraps in here. I'll take you in for a closer look. Here is what the coffee-only soil looks like. And here is what the kitchen scrap soil looks like. I'm guessing there's probably a fair amount of decomposition in there. There's not too much visible aside from the eggshells, so there must be some good critters at work in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this bucket out, and then I'm going to dump it on this tarp right here, and I'm going to see if there's any kind of critters squirming around in here. Look at that beautiful little worm in there that's just going to town. He's doing a fantastic job at breaking down everything that is inside of our compost. Ooh, looks like there's some critters that are maybe moving around in there as well. I don't see any giant large earthworms, and it's probably because it may still be too early in the day, but there clearly is a lot of life in here that's pretty active. And it's pretty amazing how much everything has broken down. You really don't see too much evidence of any kitchen scraps in there beyond this really large piece of celery and the eggshells, which take a considerable amount of time to break down. There are a lot of creepy crawlies running around in here. Look at that. That looks like a little centipede or something that's running around through the compost. So this is very biologically active, and again, the decomposition rate in such a small amount of time, pretty impressive. I returned all the soil and kitchen scraps back to the ground because a lot of those bugs are moisture sensitive and we want to protect them. Now we want to check out the coffee grounds only bin, and I don't really know what to expect with this, because hey, they're just coffee grounds. There's not a whole bunch of different food product in there. So I want to dump this out and see, is there any creepy crawlies in there that are going to work? What are we going to find in here exactly, if anything? So I combed through this pile as best as I could, and I didn't see anything crawling around insignificant. So it wasn't super biologically active like all of those kitchen scraps were. Coffee grounds in and of themselves, they may not be the most effective tool for bringing in all kinds of creepy crawlies and earthworms. However, that doesn't mean they don't have an incredible biological benefit to your soil. They're great at adding trace micronutrients and nitrogen. The other issue could be that I just waited too long and that they break down so quickly that all the critters come in really fast, they eat it up really quickly, and then they're gone. So by all means, please add them to your compost because they are very valuable to your garden soil. However, I wouldn't rely on them on their own. It seems to be that the kitchen scraps have the most amount of value. Really impressed by how quickly the kitchen scraps broke down and really the amount of biological life in there, really impressive. I only wish I would have done this later at night and maybe earlier in the process because the kitchen scraps were broken down so quickly already, I may have missed the time when most of the worms were the most active. So what are my takeaways from this experiment? Well, personally, my takeaway is that it is absolutely astounding how quickly kitchen scraps break down in your garden. In a matter of only a couple of weeks, they completely decompose to almost nothing. And that's pretty amazing. So if you are in the position where you're turning your bed over in between crops and you think, I don't have enough time to bury kitchen scraps in my garden because the bed isn't going to sit long enough, don't think that at all. In my opinion, if you are throwing away your kitchen scraps and not burying them in your garden, you are absolutely crazy. You're crazy not to bury your kitchen scraps because look how quickly the soil biology go to town and break down all of those kitchen scraps. In a matter of only a couple of weeks, they decimate them, and all of those nutrients are being released back into your soil. So that's my takeaway. You should never throw away kitchen scraps again after seeing this video. As for the coffee grounds, I am not discouraged at all for using them in my garden. I love using coffee grounds. I believe I probably just waited too long to pull that container and see if there were any creepy crawlies in there. They probably went to work a while ago and I probably missed the boat. I will always use coffee grounds in my garden because they are one of the fastest things to decompose. So everybody, I hope you found this video helpful and this experiment informative, and hopefully this confirms how quickly kitchen scraps decompose. So even if you need rapid bed turnover, please don't waste your kitchen scraps. Bury them in your garden because they will turn over in no time flat. As always, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use for real in my garden, they are all linked down below on my Amazon storefront in the video description, so check that out for products that I use in real life. And while you're there, check out my spread shop link for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Dale, what are you doing? You got your stuffy. You got your stuffy. You want to play? You want to go outside? You want to take your stuffy and go outside? You want to... Oh, he's very excited. Ready? Okay, Mr. Excitement. Ready? Ready, buddy? And go, buddy! Oh, you missed! You missed! There he goes. Oh, he's going for a zoomie. Oh, there he goes. He's over here. Whoa! Mr. Dale is so fast. I'm going to get that from you. I'm going to get it. Whoa, there he goes. Oh, it's finally cooling off at night. Dale's letting loose some energy.